it's the courage, the confidence, the competence, it's the I know, those little things that you learn along the way, and you've got to be willing to open your heart. Speaking is about giving, speaking is about sharing, speaking is about committing to an outcome for an audience.
After you have rich people, they think year to year, and very rich people, they think decade ahead, where they want to be.
And I drove 5 or 6 hours for an old mate that I used to work with over in WA, and I drove 5 or 6 hours just to do a 1 hour free talk. And he said, I love it, come back and we'll start paying you. I said, great. And
thank you very much, Anton, for coming to my podcast, Business Breakthroughs. Would you mind just opening up with what is it you do, where are you based, so I can get to know you a little bit more?
So I'm based in Australia, Vincent. I'm based in a sunny state called Queensland, a little town called Gladstone, industrial town. So we're a town of sort of high vis, we call it. We've got a lot of factories, we've got a lot of industry. We make alumina. We've got some of the world's biggest alumina producers here. We've got Rio Tinto, who's a really, really big corporate giant in town who have 3 big factories in town. We've got a power station. We've got Hovorka, who's a chemical factory. We've got a cement making factory. So, we rely on that. The whole town is really industrial. And, I did my electrical apprenticeship in one of the big industries here. And we've got a natural deep water harbour here in Gladstone, and so we've got a lot of industry on the water. We've got oil and gas on an island just out of town, and we really rely on that industry actually to sustain the town. And I guess over the years it's been good and bad for the town. So if you've ever lived in, or if you've ever heard of industrial towns, they sort of boom and bust with the economy. As the next big project comes, everything goes up, and then and I know you do some property stuff. So as it disappears, you sort of lose some of that wealth out of your town, and your economy crashes. And we're very regional, so we're a small town. But we're very, very well. We used to be boom and bust. I probably shouldn't say to that at the moment. Our local council and our elected representatives are trying to work really hard to flatten out some of that boom and bust mentality in town, and hopefully it does. My work is with a lot of those big industry. We work with leaders to help them create psychologically safe and high-performing teams. And we do that by helping them work on their mindset, upskilling their leadership.
All right, okay.
And uplifting their teams. So that's the really easy way to describe it. So in Australia in 2023, we had, off the back of probably 20 years of research from people like Amy Edmondson and Google, we had our government bring in what we call the psychosocial hazard guidelines. In other words, organisations became legally obliged to look after their people's psychological safety. And, for decades, or for, many, many decades, we've had physical safety. So we've had workplace health and safety laws, which I'm sure are pretty prevalent in most countries. But in the last 2 years, we've had now these psychological safety guidelines that really are prescriptive around job demands and around fatigue and around position description type stuff and around bullying and around harassment. And since then, we've obviously seen a bit of a peak and a rise in workplace stress-related cases. And so, our work really is to make sure that leaders have the skills, the abilities, and the knowledge and the willingness to actually have a really positive impact on their teams and not have that negative impact. So that's my town, my country, and my work in a nutshell.
Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing. It's amazing. And how long are you already doing that, helping in those companies with mindset and, with the leadership?
It's about 2004, Vincent. So
wow.
I've been doing it for a little while. If you're happy for me to do you want me to tell you the backstory? Do you want me to tell you where it sort of all started? Is that something interesting? Cool. So I've sort of got 3 origin stories, and one of them is I was nearly killed at work. At one of those industries I was working at, I had just finished my apprenticeship. I got blown up in a switchboard, had all my skin sort of blown off and burnt and crisped, and ended up in a burns unit. And they wondered whether I was going to die, because you can die from the internal burns a few days later. And so, I got through that, and then I spent the next 10 years in what I would call close to probably post-traumatic stress, which is a pretty shitty experience. And, didn't want to do too much, but I was sort of fully functioning. And I didn't want to work as an electrician anymore because I was working as a tradesperson at the time, and I had to work out how to get off the tools and then get into, I guess, leadership roles, because that's what I thought the future was. I thought my future was in leadership. I wasn't working with my hands anymore, which is really all I knew at the time. And so I started studying, and I started working my way up the corporate ladder, so to speak, just running away from not having to be around electricity anymore. And I ended up as a superintendent and as a maintenance manager, which was good. And during that time, I had really shitty leaders, which I'll come back to in a moment, like 1900s leaders, yeah, the screamers and the shouters and the you're a this and you're a that and what do I pay you for? Like all that really, really poor leadership. And it was about 10 years after the incident that I had that blown up in the switchboard, and I call it a massive boom event. And I think we all have boom events in life, and that was my first one at the age of 21. So that sort of taught me a little bit about resilience and how to bounce back, and 10 years of stewing on this thing. Why was I such a poor decision maker at the time? Why did I allow myself to make such a stupid decision that nearly took my own life at such a young age? And so you blame yourself and you ruminate, and you go over these things for about a decade, until we moved back to town. So we'd moved away for 10 years, and we moved back, and then I had to talk about it because everyone wanted to know what happened. Oh, I heard you, lost your hands, or I heard you lost your head, I heard you died alive. And so I had to talk about it, and I got asked to talk about it in the job that I was in. And I loved talking about it that much that I can remember, I did this talk, and I watched everyone light up. And so I walked into the boss's office and, handed in a resignation and said, I'm going to do this thing called public speaking. And he said, well, what's that all about? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to do it. As I said, that was just fun. Yeah. Because I was, after 10 years, I was ready to talk about this incident. And I hadn't for 10 years. And all of a sudden the floodgates opened, and it was sort of a bit cathartic, really, to a degree, just to be able to, get it off my chest and talk about what happened and sort of own up to it. I think ownership was the big deal for me, trying to own this thing that I'd sort of tried to run away from for 10 years. And then I had to come home and tell my wife that we were now officially unemployed, which was interesting. And so that was 20 years ago. She didn't really take the news all as well as I hoped she would.
Yeah,
two home loans at the time, 2 kids, now no jobs, and apparently only 1 adult in the house. So she shared with me, which was interesting. And so for a year I did public speaking back then, around this event that I had, but that was 2004. And then it wasn't long after I'd started speaking about it that leaders started saying, hey, you're speaking to all our teams. Can you come and speak to the leaders about how the leaders can influence workplace safety as well? And so I did that, and didn't know much about safety leadership at the time, but went out and shared with leaders and sort of learned along the way. And all of a sudden, from 2005 on to now, I've really been working with leaders in organisations everywhere. And one of the reasons that I really leant into that leadership stuff was, one, because I knew that leaders are at the front line. And if you do some research, you'll find that there's 5 main drivers of workplace health and safety, and I mean physical safety. And this is from 100 years of research. There's a great report out. It's a meta study of 100 years of data. And what they say is the micro decisions of frontline leaders are one of the biggest contributing factors to whether your team is going to work safely or not. And so, I've understood the power of leadership, and then you couple that with the fact that I had really crappy leaders, and I know that really good leaders can have a really good impact on humans. And so I sort of, I then lent, in the last probably 5 or 10, I've really lent into this leadership under pressure. And my third boom event, the first one was blown up in a switchboard. The second one was shitty leaders who used to go boom. And then the third one was, I was actually on an industrial site not far from town. It wasn't in Gladstone. It was out at a little township close to us, where the whole plant blew up. Like literally it was a world scale, like an explosion, boom, like, blew the whole joint up. And we're all freaking out. And so people could have been killed. Like it was, a world scale event. It took 3.5 years for that plant to come back online, that particular part of the plant. Like we're talking massive world scale. And we're all standing around watching this whole factory just explode, in front of our eyes. And it's really difficult to explain that, the fear that sits in behind that. And what I saw was the leaders on that day do a really good job. They stood up, they leant in, they led under pressure. And I was so moved. This is 2021. So, 5 years ago now, 4 years, the 4 year anniversary of that event passed like a week or two ago. It was the 25th of May. And, I watched these leaders just do amazing things, like just to keep us feeling safe. And then all of a sudden I had this sort of epiphany where I saw this physical safety incident that could have killed people, but the psychological safety piece sort of come together. But what really pulled them together was leadership under pressure. So since then, we've lent into it at the Guinea Group, in my organisation, and we've lent into leadership under pressure and how we work with leaders in a really specific way to help them be better at leading their teams. Not just when it's fun, not just when the work's easy, but when the pressure's on, when the stress is on, when timeframes are tight, when deadlines are tight, when safety's the priority. And how do you help leaders be emotional? How do you help them be controlled? How do you help them be calm? And how do you help them make the right decisions in their frontal lobes, not in their emotional part of their brain and their amygdala? So that's been the focus of our work for at least the last 4 years. And, we've done so much. We work with over 200 businesses now and thousands of leaders and living the dream.
Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing. I mean, there was a lot of what you shared. I was wondering, like, when you said, like, you had this accident where you get the burns, and after 10 years you've been actually out. It took you for quite a long time to speak about it. And after you said, like, you decided to do a public speaking. So how did you come up to that? Because obviously there is a lot of people, they went through certain trauma, but they are not going right away to go and start public speaking. So was there someone to help you with that? How did you start sharing your story? Because I think it's really powerful and it can help people.
Oh, thanks for asking. So what happened was we'd worked around Australia for about 10 years by this time, and I'd been made redundant, so I'd lost my job as well, which really sucked 10 years after the incident. And we decided to come home to Gladstone, so we were working our way around Australia. And when we came home to Gladstone, Vincent, I got a job in one of the factories here, and the factory was just being built. It was called Yarn. It's a Rio Tinto site, and I'd actually got asked to chair a safety meeting. So safety is a big deal in these industrial plants because people can get really injured. And the maintenance manager at the time came and said, Anton, we got this safety meeting coming up. Can you chair it? Can you run it? We're giving everyone a turn to run these meetings, but, as part of your development. And I said, no, thanks. And he said, why? Because, we all do it. It's just sort of, I said, because I don't like the topics you do. The last couple of topics were how to indicate off a roundabout or how to put sunburn cream on properly. And I said, these aren't real safety topics. I said, no, none of the people here, or most of the people here, haven't been through a life and death situation, haven't nearly died. And I remember being in the ambulance going to the hospital on that day where, two ambulance drivers were talking and they said, this dude could die up to a few days later from these internal burns. And I said, not many people have had that experience. And you think safety is how to put sunburn cream on. Safety is you can die at work. And he said, shit. He said, and no one realized, well, he didn't realize I've had that experience. And I said, I'll chair the safety meeting, Vincent. But I said, I'll chair it only if I can tell my story, because I said, that's real safety. And I feel like if you want me to make a difference, if you want me to do this thing, I want to actually share something meaningful for people. And he said, yeah, no worries, do it. And so I thought, let's get it out there. Let's tell people about this story, and I did. And the first time was a bit clunky, scary. My voice was quivering, and I didn't quite get it right, and I didn't see the flicker in people's eyes because they're thinking, "Who's this weirdo?" But then I put some gory photos up of what my hands looked like, and you could see all the skin falling off, and that sort of got people thinking. And then 6 months later, the same maintenance manager said, "Man, that was a powerful story 6 months ago. Can you do it again?" And I said, "Yeah, I will." And after that second time, because I'd sort of, I'd been thinking about it and I'd sort of got it right and I'd crafted a little bit and I'd sort of, worked on it, not knowing that I was going to go and do it for a living for the next. And I still get asked. It's probably only been a week or two since I actually did a whole keynote I'm a keynote speaker. I did a keynote around that talk. I kid you not. I still get asked to do that talk. Like I do so much other work now, and
Yeah.
still get asked to do that keynote. But it was after that second talk where I went in and said, "Hey, Shane Murphy was the guy's name. Shout out to Shane. Haven't seen him forever. What a beautiful human." And I said, "Shane, I've got to go and do this for a living." And he said, "You're mad." And I said, "I know." Here we are.
Wow. Wow. And what that person, like, they told you, like, you'll be doing it for a living, or you said that you'll be doing it for a living? You
I
already.
said, "Oh, I'm going to do it for a living." And he said, "You're
Okay.
mad." I
Okay.
remember him saying, "You're mad, man." I said, "I know."
And what was the next step? How did you, because I know there is a lot of people, they want
Mm,
to be a speaker, and let's say they have a story to share.
mm,
And
mm,
you shared one time after you've been asked again, so you shared it again. Now you decided, okay,
mm,
I'm gonna be a speaker. I'm gonna share the story, and I'm gonna make
mm,
money from that. So how did you go
mm.
about it? What was the first steps?
Oh, great question. And I think this is business 101, so back then, this is 2004, and there's no real Facebook ads, or there's no
Mhm.
there's no way to really market yourself other than sending an email. I just got on emails. Who do I know? I just got everyone's email address that I knew, started sending them an email, sent them a gory photo, said, "This is what I want to talk to your teams about." And finally, and I was, and Vincent, zero business knowledge, zero financial knowledge, zero marketing knowledge, zero speaking skills, like started at absolute zero. Um, I just had the confidence. So I always say this model, and I think your viewers and your listeners, and good on you for putting this information out there, man, would benefit from this. Courage to start. Courage comes before confidence to continue. So you keep putting yourself in a position where you get better, and then you become competent, and it's the competent that is mastery. Courage to start, confidence to continue, and then the confidence to master it. And those first couple that I did, thank God no one paid me for them, because like I said, and I think I was smart enough to say, "Hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, but if you put me in front of your team, I think I'll make a difference, because I've seen their eyes light up when I talk to them."
Mm.
And so people did, and I still remember some of those early, and I drove 5 or 6 hours for an old mate that I used to work with over in WA, and I drove 5 or 6 hours just to do a 1 hour free talk. And he said, "I love it. Come back, and we'll start paying you." I said, "Great." And in that first, and it was crazy because, and here's the thing, there wasn't even a safety speaking industry back then. So back
Mm.
then there was two of us in Australia. I didn't even know the other guy. I thought but you know, and this is the thing for business owners and for property buyers: be ignorant, be naive.
Yeah.
The more naive and ignorant you are, the better off you're going to be, because you don't know what's ahead of you. Because if I knew what I know now, I don't think I could. I don't think I could have gone into business. I don't think I
Mm.
could have even started, because
Mm.
it's just such a struggle. It's an uphill battle. You so many hurdles. The people that I spoke to were tough. Like industry, 2 o'clock in the morning, because that's some of the only times that they'd let me speak to them,
Mm.
just before the end of their night shift, and they were pissed off about
Mm.
safety. And they didn't. Who are you to come and tell us to our site about safety? I cut my teeth speaking literally to some of the hardest groups. So after 1 or 2 years, not much could really phase me on stage. I'd done the tough stuff. But what was really interesting was the first year or two was really difficult, because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Then when I started transitioning into speaking to high level people in the organization, that safety leadership stuff, I sort of had to have my game on a little bit, because they expected a little bit of a higher level. Now I'm not just out speaking to the tradespeople or the operators or the underground coal miners who are happy to swear and, fuck this and fuck that and what this
Oh, yeah.
safety fit. All right. Now I've got to actually, speak professionally, and I've sort of got to do it, with some sort of charisma. And I had a great guy standing beside me, and one of my first coaches, Mark McLaren was his name. He's a beautiful human, and he came and spoke with me one day, and we were actually on the same stage. He got a speaking gig, I got a speaking gig, and we were speaking to leaders by this stage, doing safety leadership work. And he he pulled me aside after it and he said, Anton, he said, you're good with the frontline teams because that's where you come from. You're a tradesman. He said, but do you really want to be speaking to these senior leaders in organizations? And do you want to do that for a living? And I said, yeah. He said, well, you better get better at it because he said, you're pretty average at the moment. And I said, Mark, thanks so much for the feedback. And that I was a couple of years into my journey and I'll never forget this advice, Vincent, and I'm so grateful that he gave me this advice. And I share this now. I share this probably weekly. He said, Anton, you keep thinking, he said, because you're telling us such a personal story, he said, you keep thinking it's about you. I said, shit, Mark. I said, well, he said, Anton, he said, I need to give you 4 letters, INAY. As a speaker, it's not about you.
Yeah.
I went, wow, man, that's powerful, bro. He said, it's about your audience. Doesn't matter what you feel, think, experience while you're up there doing it. It doesn't matter if you're having an experience. It only matters about your audience experience. And I went, whoa. And, couple of just thank God I got that, advice early. Maybe I would have worked it out over time, but I just really grateful to Mark for being such a good human and just saying, hey, mate, you look out at your audience and you look at every single one of them and you try to understand what experience they're having when you're talking to them. And when you're making a point, you look at one of them in the eye and you make that point directly to that person and you make it personal for them. And it's just like this moment of time where everything sort of sunk for me. And I've never really felt as empowered after that, and obviously that didn't fix everything and I didn't become an expert speaker after that. But, this is 20 years in the making now, being able to articulate a story. I've got to tell you, man, it's the courage, the confidence, the competence, it's the I know, those little things that you learn along the way. And you've got to be willing to open your heart and your mind up to actually take advice on from other humans. And I'm so glad I've had a few of those on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You're right. Like I do also some speaking, and I do a lot of places. There is a association. It's called Professional Speaking Association. You also have in Australia, actually. I'll be heading there next year for an event, and basically you can meet there different speakers. They can showcase how they speak. I've done a lot of them last year, also some this year, and the funny thing is, like you said, I fly to London to speak there for like 30 minutes, and after a day back, and I just spent £500 on hotels, flights, and I don't get paid. And people are like, you came from Scotland, why did you do that? I was like, yeah, firstly, I practice. Secondly, you never know who listens, and you can pick up a business somewhere, a connection you don't know. So I think it's really powerful. But on the other note, what you mentioned about the story, I see it a lot that people share the story and they are making it about them. And after you are really connected to that person and you're like, yeah, it's a good story, but what? Like, how is that going to relate to me? And I see this mistake many speakers are doing it. And after it's like, yeah, they might have a good story, but if they don't know how to connect it to the audience, it's actually useless. Yeah.
That's right. And I've got this really cool process. I'm not sure if your audience will get any value from this, but when you have an experience, you need to be able to evaluate it so that you can share it in such a way that people get a learning and that they can implement something from it. Experience, evaluation, and then you're going to be able to articulate it in a way that is useful and meaningful. I do 2-day public speaking trainings now, Vincent, and we take people on a journey from day 1 to day 2 where they get up. And actually, probably some of my most powerful work has been around teaching people to tell their lived experience story and take them on the sort of journey and doing the work that we're talking about tonight. And to see people unpack a life event and then talk about how they evaluated and learnt from it, and then being able to share it with another human who can then go and apply some learnings, because that's what we're looking for from our speakers. We're looking for speakers who we can relate to, who are relevant, and who give us these like aha moments, where we go, wow, I could do that, and you're right, I probably, you'll get to a point, I'm sure you have already, where you get paid, well to do speaking work, and so we should, because there's 20 years of experience gone into this. You're not paying for the hour, you're paying for the 2 decades of work that you'll have done to get to this point. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much I think about the material. It only matters whether someone can take something away and do something with it, because speaking is about giving. Speaking is about sharing. Speaking is about committing to an outcome for an audience. And if I could share with your audience, especially the people out there that want to be public speakers, give more of yourself and make sure that people walk away with a little bit of your heart and a little bit of the knowledge that you've got in a way that they can implement and take action and improve their own lives. And if you can do that when you're on stage, guess what? You'll change some lives, and you'll get invited back, which is good from a business perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. The same, like we go to different events. I don't know. I started with Tony Robbins. A lot of things from Tony Robbins. I'm actually heading this year again for a UPW.
Good.
I really like the experience of people, have very high energy. And a little bit of problem I have when I do that in the UK in here, and I go and I'm very high energetic speaker, and they are like, hey, calm down, you are not in USA. You are not in USA, This is the feedback I'm getting. Like, you are too much for UK. I'm like, this is what you say, I don't care.
Yeah, that's true too. I get it.
People
I get it.
are a little bit more kind of close and thoughtful. You need to go around the bush before you say something, and they don't like the directness, but I do like it. And it was very actually good experience, because as you know, I'm very new to insiders and to JT Fox. I only discovered him.
Big shout out to JT.
Last year. So, and we obviously signed up for the event, and now we joined the insiders, and he's very direct, and I'm like, that's great.
Oh, he's tough. You won't mind me saying this. You got a JT Fox tie on. I've got one hanging on my wall. So, and the same color too, which is really, really interesting. There's a bit of rapport building for you. Yeah, cool. Yeah. No, good on you.
Are you already part of insiders or JT Fox family, and yourself?
Yeah. No, I believe in having coaches, and JT's just been a big inspiration for me. And again, I spent another day with him yesterday, and had dinner with JT last night, and had dinner with the founder of a company called Ugg Boots, which is only I think $1 billion brand. Nice. Brian Smith was an amazing human, and talked about just his life and how he started this global brand, and then how he lost the brand contractually in some way, some fine print. He ended up losing the brand. And then I said to him, what happened after that? Over dinner, and he said, I got the brand back. And I said, well, he said, no, you got to buy the book, he said. So good on him. So I got his book on Audible last night, and I said, and his book, Building a Brand, it's called, on Audible. And I'm only in the very, very early stages, of course, because I only sort of got it last night. So I'm really looking forward to it. But actually, of course, I can't find it when I'm in a hurry, as you know. But so yeah, looking forward to having a listen to that. Can't wait to see how he got his brand back.
Nice.
He was such a nice guy to have.
I have one more question, which is nothing speaking now, but you said that you started in roughly 2004, helping those companies with the leadership, and obviously that your town has a lot of these factories. I'm from Czech Republic, from town where there is a big steel factory that is employing, lots of people. I mean,
hundreds of thousands.
It's running since 1900s. It's still running.
Wow.
And I know a lot of people, they go to work there as like, they need some kind of workers, but it's like, it's really, what I heard is really difficult, like with the management and leaders, like you said, it's really the old school style. Have you seen like the progression since 2004 to 2025? Like it's changing. Now the newer people are coming, and it's maybe a little bit better approach. But how is it like that? Because in my city, I think it's not changing.
Really? Oh, good. Can you give them all my business card?
Yeah, the only problem is I don't know how many people in there speak English. So that's the only.
Oh, well, that's.
But we can go together. You can speak, and
let's go. Let's go together. Let me tell you, so that's called an emotion wheel. There's 6 basic human emotions in the middle, and you work your way out. I could not have well, maybe I could have 20 years ago, well, 2005, when I started working with leaders, I could not have had, I don't think, a discussion with them about how do you feel today?
Oh
What
yeah.
emotional state are you in? And how does your emotional state impact the emotional state of those around you? Like that would have just been like, blah, 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 blah. That would have been sort of talking Czech Republic to Aussie leaders. And, we've grown so much over the last 20 years in leadership, I can still remember the days where we talked about how to have a robust conversation, and you taught the shit sandwich where you do the positive and then you do the negative and then you leave on a positive. And they were sort of really, they were okay things to train instead of, how we do it now, where you open up really strongly and you get straight to the point, and then you do it empathetically. Empathy. Imagine saying the word empathy, in 2000 and even 2015. So empathy is a word of the 2000s. And, imagine writing a book about, upgrading your mindset as a leader and talking about metacognition, how we thinking about our thinking. What are you thinking about as a leader? And why do you do leadership? Imagine saying to someone, well, Simon Sinek's probably been around. I think he did that famous talk in 2013 when that started changing the world a little bit about what's your why. And that's about as basic as it was back then. Why do you do leadership? And we still ask people that now. But in the last, decade, wow, psychology. So actually, let me sort of digress a little bit. When I first started doing leadership coaching work, a lot of people, I used to get a lot of objections and a lot of no's because I had a HR degree, not a psychology degree. So the first thing I studied was HR. And so I'd say to leaders, let's do coaching. And they said, no, we need a psychologist to do that. I said, oh, and I never really understood that. But after hearing it enough, I went and actually studied psychology. I went and got a degree because I thought, what if you can't beat them, join them. And so I actually did that study. And I'm so glad I did because it just helped me understand, the neurology and the biology, the psychology of leadership. And what I've seen in the last probably 5 years is this, like as the universe has changed, like everyone knows what lobes of the brain there are now, like it's common knowledge about neuroplasticity, and neuroscience is not an uncommon word. And we brought that knowledge of how people react, respond, behave, decide, frontal lobe stuff versus amygdala versus learning styles of your occipital lobe and all the, the visual learning versus temporal learning and different things. And, we can now, like leaders expect, like if I went and did a leadership program that didn't have psychology, neurology and biology in it, it wouldn't fly, and that's where we are now. Leaders are more educated. Oh yeah, don't worry. There's still 1900s leaders out there. Thank God. That's, we still got a job. But here's the other interesting thing about that. So you talked about the factory, right? You said there's still 1900s leaders in that factory, and there will be. Now, in that factory, you'll probably find there's some strong leaders, and there's probably 1900s leaders. Let's say there's going to be a percentage of the empathetic, care factor, controlled, humanistic. Leaders, and yeah, there'll be the 1900s leaders, let's say. But here's the thing: most of our work is with the empathetic leaders. Most of our work is with high-performing leaders. Most of our work is with psychologically safe leaders. Most of our work is with leaders who are strong leaders, who care, value, and support their staff. Like I've done 1,400 one-on-ones, right? 1,400. 1400 just in the last 5 years. And how do I know that? Because I've recorded them on my Remarkable. Like you're writing down I hope are you writing on a Remarkable?
Yeah, I don't, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean, right? I've got 1,400 coaching sessions in this thing just in the last 5 years. Imagine how many I've done in the last 20. So I'm sitting with leaders one-on-one every single day. The vast majority of those leaders are strong. Not much of, probably 20% of our work is with teams that are in turmoil, teams that are in distress, teams that are distressed. But most of our work are from leaders who want the extra 1%ers. we got this great, saying in Australia, you get 1% better every day. Maybe you got that in the Czech Republic as well. But we talk about the 1%ers. And there you go. You and I are in the 1% with JT Fox, but we talk about the 1%s. And, I work with leaders who are looking for the 1%. And it's really cool because, I'm just working with high performers, psychologically safe leaders, and it just sort of elevates my game because nearly every session, yesterday I had to step out. There was one meeting that I couldn't get out of, so I had to do it while I had one coaching session while JT Fox was on stage doing his thing, and it was about emotional intelligence, and I was taking a leader through his emotional intelligence score, as we measure against the Daniel Goleman model: self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, social regulation, which is a really important concept for leaders. What are your triggers? And this person was a very senior leader at a global level, right? So I work with leaders at really senior levels in organizations. And this is a leader who's hundreds, maybe thousands of people in his org chart, but he still wants to. He said, Anton, I need to fine tune my emotional responses to the triggers that I feel, and when I get triggered by a certain stimulus. He said, we need to work out what that stimulus is and what my emotional response is so that I respond, not react. That I'm working at that level with leaders, and we do amazing work. And then today, Anton, I love the session yesterday. Thanks so much. Let's keep doing some great work. Absolutely. Let's keep doing that. And so, it's quite rewarding to lean in, and coaching is a lot like speaking, Vincent, which I'm sure you're probably going to work out, or if you haven't already, that it's not about you. If the people that I'm coaching aren't getting great value, they don't come back. And people say to me, "What's your script? What's the process?" Because people want to know now. Hey, how can we do that? I said, I can give you a coaching program, but you've got to be able to take a person on a journey. You've got to be able to look them in the eye and understand what they're going through, and be able to articulate and have them articulate what it is that you can do for them and how you can support and serve. So, coaching is a lot of ways. Coaching is a lot like public speaking. You've really got to help people have an experience that they don't forget and that they can go and do something with that makes a difference in their lives. So,
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing everything.
Anytime. How are we going for time?
No. Yeah, I'm just checking. So we are already like 30 minutes, 35 minutes in. So I think it's going to be probably enough for today.
All right.
So just a last question. Because the podcast called Business Breakthrough. So what was your biggest business breakthrough in your career you can think of?
I can tell you one of my biggest breakthroughs. When JT wrote that, right, and I read it, it was such a great book, and you just got to read all of the horrible stories in here, and this is a bestseller at the moment. And for anyone out there, get this book. It's not the traditional business book. It's a business book about business failures. And I think, the first thing that I said to JT, or I think I messaged JT, I said, why did you pick all the billionaires in the world and all these big thinkers? And I said to JT, you're around really successful people, and yes, you've got all of their failures, and they feel better reading the book and then thinking that other people have had failures too. I said, JT, go and ask all your clients for their failures. My biggest business breakthrough, there's a tongue twister, say that fast 3 times, was a business failure, was losing a multi-million-dollar business overnight. Because I hadn't diversified, and the business I'm running now is my second 7-figure business. But when you lose one overnight from Friday to Monday, when you're earning 7 figures Friday and Monday you're not, because you lost one contract and you didn't diversify in your business and you only had one income stream, that is a business failure, and business is war. And I was shot. I was shot emotionally. I was shot spiritually. I was shot through confidence. And I think my biggest business breakthrough was I spent 100 days in anxiety, worrying about the future and worrying what was I going to do how was I going to pick myself up out of that. We were crippled financially because we had to sort of, shut that business down in a hurry. We had a lot of staff that had to be paid out. We never missed a payment, never missed a staff payment, never missed, we had multiple 7 figures worth of debt that we had to service. And it was a horrible, horrible, horrible 100 days. How do I know it was 100 days? Because I'm a triathlete and I do triathlon. I was doing at a reasonably decent level at that time, representing our country, which was special. And I stopped training, and the day I went back to training, I just happened to look at the date, and it happened to be 100 days. And so I sort of talk about the 100 days of hell. And that 100 days of anxiety, that for me, the breakthrough was, my business breakthrough was going to a doctor to get anti-anxiety medication that I knew that I didn't need, because I knew that I'd be able to talk myself out of it if I tried hard enough, which I did. You go and get medicated. Like, medication's good. Like, I'm psychology trained, and I get what happens with hormones and chemicals and neurotransmitters, and I get that. So, for your audiences, anyone out there who feels like they need that support from a psychiatrist in Australia who needs to prescribe medication, go and get it. I did, and I chose not to fill that script. But the breakthrough was, I learnt the valuable lesson of reframing. And reframing is, how do you turn the worst negative situation into some sort of a positive? And I've since learnt my biggest business breakthrough is to be able to use these 2 words, at least. No matter what goes on around you, no matter how bad the world is, no matter how bad your business is, if you can say, at least I've got my health, at least I've got a roof over my head, at least I've got a loving wife, you've sort of got to lean into, you've got to get back to first principles, and you've got to get back to basics and be grateful for the things that you do have, not the things that you've lost.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't even know if that's the biggest that is my biggest challenge in business. The lesson was around resilience and reframing, that you've got to get up and keep moving. The sun's going to come up tomorrow. And actually, yeah, I can articulate it. The biggest business breakthrough is this: persistence beats resistance. If you are persistent and you are consistent, you will be successful. So I think, for me, for your listeners who are hopefully going to get a heap of value from this podcast, never give up. Like, business is war, and it goes like, it's a 20-year journey. If you are thinking, if you're in business and you want to succeed next week, next month, next year, go and find a job somewhere. It's because it's a decade-long process, and because if you don't hang around for a decade, 1, I don't feel you've mastered it, and 2, especially if you're in the services industry like you and I are, the longer you're in it, the more lives you change, the more people you get to meet, the more of yourself you get to share, and that's the game. The game is long term. You and I have now signed up with JT as a coach for 10 years.
Yeah.
We have long-term commitments.
Yeah.
And there's
It's
people.
good. Yeah, it's good. Like, there was this book, I don't know the name in English, but that was about, like, when you are really poor people, they think only from day to day just to survive, right? So they're like
Yes.
homeless people. After you have there was a very poor people. After you have poor people, they will week to week. After you have middle class, they are month to month, so it's normal, like what we know. After you have rich people, they think year to year, and very rich people, they think decade ahead where they want to be. And it's very difficult to start thinking decade ahead. I'm very happy that I can start thinking year to year with a business and what we want to achieve. But when JT offered, like, you join Insiders and it's 10 years, and I'm like, oh, good, this is a 10-year thinking. So definitely need to be around people who are thinking for 10 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
Great decision. Great choice.
Good. Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Anton, again
Good,
for
you happy?
everything. I'm so looking forward to meet you in person. I'll probably
Oh,
see
absolutely.
Mega Success in November, I believe.
Yes. So excited. So
Amazing.
excited.
The first time I'm
Yeah.
gonna go, obviously. So looking forward
Me
to it.
too.
Thank you very much
Good.
for your time. I know it's late for you there in Australia, so have
Thanks,
a
mate.
nice rest. And yeah, I'm looking forward to speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Vincent. Good luck to all your listeners too. Good.